Prynhawn da pawb, and thank you for that nice introduction, Helgard. I'm delighted to be speaking to the Book Council this year. It's a really great pleasure, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that I've been doing with the curriculum. But if we were to take the author and literary activist Pam Allen's phrase, words change worlds, we can appreciate the concept of book power as an important medium of social change. And I'm using that term here to refer to all those things we know about the significance of reading, but also to consider some of those tricky questions about who writes, who gets published, what is written about, and to the ways in which the national literature portrays, speaks to, and extends the national imagining. The book industry has the power to shape culture in big and small ways. So after a year which has brought together and forced us apart, a year in which time and space has been reworked, and a year of momentous events that have made us stop and reflect, we can now begin to develop actions based on a refreshed approach and move forward and see things in a new way and begin to do things in a new way. And if there was a silver lining at all in the COVID era, I have identified 4 things that I think it has generated. The first being this time of reflection, time to extend our ideas and think about innovative ways in meeting new challenges. It's also extended our ideas about what engagement is, because we can reach out and meet with people through using the new technologies nationally and internationally. And very particularly, it's reinstated the value of collective endeavour, doing things together to make a difference. And as the Book Council prepares for its 60th anniversary celebrations, I think it's timely to reflect back and to look forward, to think about mission statements, to think about impact, to think about the Book Council's ethos and values, its priorities and its actions. And I noted that as part of the special anniversary brochure that the Council is producing, Helgard Kraus, in her introduction, she signalled this moment of deep reflection, and she said that the past year, and I quote her, also highlighted what could be interpreted as a colonial blind spot within our culture and institutions around language and equalities. And she signals the Council's intent to work more proactively on ensuring that Wales, and I quote her, in its books and its practices will reflect a genuinely diverse Wales to which people from all walks of life, from all sorts of backgrounds and with all types of experience can feel they belong. And I wholly endorse that perspective. This kind of turning point, this moment of reflection is part of a wider trend in Welsh affairs, following the tragic murder of George Floyd and the ensuing Black Lives Matter global campaign. And that turning point led to work that I have been doing in enhancing the new school curriculum in order for it to become more reflective of the themes, perspectives and contributions of Black and minority ethnic communities in Wales. It's also seen a major audit of public memorials, statues and street names as they relate to the history of slavery. And what we've noted is major arts and culture public organisations in Wales being proactive and establishing initiatives to address what they see as an imbalance in representation, in participation and access for minority ethnic groups. So, for example, the Arts Council in Wales has had a creative agent strategy in 25 Welsh schools, and I've been privy to having a look at some of these projects where they are engaging children in projects based on the concept of cynefin, looking at their localities, at the contributions and experiences of Black and minority ethnic peoples, and using those as a lever for change. And we know about Literature Wales, who've launched this wonderful professional development programme for new writers from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. The National Library of Wales is running a project on decolonising its cultural assets. And Sports Wales has launched an initiative called Tell Your Story campaign, which encourages people from minority communities to share their knowledge and understanding of accessing or not various sports activities. And in conversation with Helga, I note that the Books Council is doing a review of their baseline data in terms of a diversity assessment, what's been going on in terms of adult books over the last 3 years. So we've got no reason to believe that these actions won't be sustained or indeed grow and develop. The government has recently published its draft race equality action plan entitled An Anti-Racist Wales by 2030. And amongst a range of policy fields, it signals its commitment on arts and culture organisation in Wales, which it sees, I quote, as a powerful vehicle for communicating unity and cohesion. Public bodies will be held accountable for encouraging active and equal access to participation in all forms of culture. So why is this important? Well, in undertaking the work for the government on the curriculum, we became, as a working group, became aware of a whole plethora of research that demonstrated racial inequality in our schools in Wales. And part of the story that we saw and heard is this sense of disenfranchisement that Black children, Black and minority ethnic children and young people feel. They feel that their communities and their perspectives don't feature in what's being taught in schools and in the literature that's available to them. And this maps on to extensive research that has indicated the impacts of this on children and young people, on their literacy, on their development, and their self-esteem, on their aspirations. So being able to identify with characters in a text, illustrations and values is significant to Black and minority ethnic children, but it's also highly significant to all children in Wales. Children learn, as we know, from books by transferring those kinds of knowledges into the real world. And that gives books the potential to reflect cultural values and to teach children about society. Some research that we looked at by Ghanea says that not presenting ethnic diversity in children's books can contribute to the cultivation of racial biases and stereotypes and obstruct the cultivation of compassion for others. So ethnic diversity in children's books in particular can therefore not only be beneficial to children from those backgrounds, but also to children as a whole, all our children in Wales, and the ambition that they hold more inclusive worldviews. So that's why books matter, as you know, and the matter of books matters. And while I'm talking, I put down a little challenge to you to think about maybe 3 books written by Black authors in Wales. Have a little think about that. 2 recent UK reports on children and young people's readings underscore the issues. The Centre for Literacy in Primary Education have published their Reflecting Realities report in 2020, which identifies and evaluates the representation of Black and minority ethnic characters within picture books, fiction and non-fiction books for those aged 3 to 11. And this work provides a benchmark to track and understand progress on this theme, but also it provides a toolkit to support both producers and consumers of children's literature to be more critically reflective in their moves towards a more inclusive future. I was startled when I saw that just 7% of children's books published in the entire UK over the last 3 years feature characters of colour. This research shows that characters from Black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds remain significantly underrepresented in comparison to the UK's primary school population, where 1/3 of children are from a minority ethnic background. Now, in our review in Wales, we noted that 12% of children in primary schools and 12% of children in secondary schools come from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. But that's not evenly distributed across Wales. And in some schools in our cities, 1/3 or over 1/3 of children are from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. Why I like this report is because it asks some interesting questions of the literature. It asks, for example, are the characters authentically depicted, relatable individuals living real and everyday lives? Do we encounter well-developed ethnic minority characters who are integral to the narrative? Are the subjects and titles documenting inspirational historical figures varied? Does the book ensure positive, casual inclusion of ethnic minority characters who are not defined by their ethnicity? And does the book challenge misconceptions and prejudices about underrepresented groups? It seems to me these questions are critical and vital for all children in the ambition of the new curriculum to enable what we note as ethical and informed citizens of Wales and the world. Authentic books that reflect diverse backgrounds visually and in literary content, in voice, agency and perspective are needed both in Welsh and in English in order to produce a curriculum that is enabling, stimulating and looks outwards, not just reflect what is. You might have come across another study which has been recently highlighted in the press commissioned by Penguin Random House. And this found that only 1% of school students study books written by people of colour at GCSE. They also found that 82% of the 500,000 or so secondary school pupils responding to this survey said they did not recall ever studying a book by a Black, Asian or minority ethnic author. And teachers talked about having lack of time, budget and teaching resources and little or no training on how to talk about race in the classroom, and it left them reluctant to introduce GCSE texts that stray from the usual books offered on the curriculum. And this really reflects what we found in our work in Wales, that teachers lacked the resources, that they had little training in this respect or little professional development in this respect, and they were therefore underconfident in stretching out and reaching for new types of materials. And we know that in Wales that neither is this confined to children's books. I did a little overview myself some time back, writing about Black writing in Wales, which was published in Planet magazine, and found a very sort of disappointing picture across the nation. And when I won Welsh Book of the Year 20 years ago, I had done my speech saying something like, well, I might be the first person of colour to win Welsh Book of the Year, but I won't be the last, signalling the potential of rich writings from minority authors to come. And found myself on the judging panel of Wales Book of the Year in 2005 and again this year, still pining for a better reflection of those authors in our national literature. So the barriers remain huge. And I was just going to say a little bit about the curriculum work that we have been doing for the Welsh Government and what we found. Well, certainly this issue about resources was one that we were asked to look at. And we found that there was a kind of ad hoc approach to the resources that were being made available to teachers, and that there was very sort of little attention on these issues as they connected to Story Cymru, as they relate to the story of the historical, social and cultural development of Wales. So teachers might be using, say, the story of Rosa Parks, or they might be talking about the civil rights movements in the States, or they might be focusing on slavery in history. So we really feel that there's a huge need for appropriate bilingual resources being made available to our teaching workforce. And that would only be reasonable if we have these expectations in terms of the curriculum. And we also found that the issue of professional development of teachers, the fact that they needed good, ongoing and high quality training was a feature of the research and of the account. Teachers require guidance, they require exemplars, and they require training. And we've made 51 recommendations relating to the use of resources, relating to developing the teaching workforce, relating to opening access to greater representation in the education workforce for Black and minority, people from Black and minority backgrounds, and for the need for better engagement and a kind of whole school approach in transforming the culture of schools so that they can deliver on this ambition. We certainly need educational books that reflect Welsh concerns and Welsh experiences. So the book industry has the power to shape culture in big and small ways. The people behind the book serve as gatekeepers, and they can make a huge difference in determining which stories are amplified and which stories are shut out. And if the people who work in publishing are not a diverse group, or certainly not critically aware of ensuring the diversity of their offer, how can diverse voices be truly represented in the books that we receive? The Race Equality Action Plan indicates that leaders are going to be held to account. And so organisations are going to need to ask themselves, what data do we need? What changes to our working practice, to the composition of our boards and our workforce? How much engagement do we undertake in our decision-making? What are we doing to maximise participation and access? And what will be our measure of success? Addressing these questions isn't a case of patronage or special attention, but of partnership, new ways of working, being imaginative and being proactive. So I suggest we have to look at the entire print culture of Wales and of the types of infrastructure that will enable more diverse literary output. Probably we need more journalists, authors, illustrators, book reviewers, literary agents and publishers that reflect this critical and diverse perspective. It has to be, I think, a collective endeavour. Publishers have a critical role to play, but all those other actors that I have listed in the print culture of Wales also have a critical role to play. And we need to build relationships between the creatives, policymakers, publishers, promoters, those who are giving out prizes and awards, integrate the effort to produce good outcomes. So we'd be looking for a broad reach of collaborative endeavour. And this is what the Draft Race Equality Action Plan talks about, a partnership forum that thinks about exciting and innovative collaborative projects between major arts and culture organisations. So let me conclude as I began with that idea about book power. As I said, the book industry has the power to shape culture in big and small ways. It has the power to redefine ideas about nation and national belonging and inclusivity. This doesn't take attention away from any of the equality issues in Wales that require our attention. Diversity should be our norm and a critical dimension of all our actions and activities. I hope you were easily able to identify those 3 books by people of colour, and I wish the Book Council all the best in its proactive approach to these issues. Diolch yn fawr.